Salutations everyone, this is Razor, finally giving you guys another Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer video. I know it's been a while, but there is a reason, because I knew something like this was going to happen. The 1.06 combat balance change to the multiplayer, specifically for silver and gold levels of play, was the patch that this game desperately needed to save the multiplayer, because the way that it was very, very unstable, and guns and powers and nothing was very strong. And thankfully, we know BioWare had problems with single player, but the multiplayer is handled by a different team. So they've been really hard at work to make this multiplayer as good as it should be. And I gotta say, they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. They hit the nail on the head for pretty much everything that was wrong with the multiplayer, and they changed it. I knew there was going to be something like this in the future, so that's why I haven't made any videos about the multiplayer recently, but expect more from this. So let's go into the buffs. Everything got buffed. BioWare devs kind of love meddling in the bronze area, and whenever they were testing things, according to, the forums when I was in the alpha, they were focusing on how things handled it in bronze. When I was in the alpha, there wasn't enough time to play a lot of silver and gold matches, just a couple, and obviously I didn't have all the powers at max level, didn't have all the guns, let alone all the guns at, mid, let alone max level, to truly see how it worked. But when the game came out, we got to get used to all of the new things, and sure, we probably started off with bronze because things were very difficult from the get-go, much more difficult than they were in ME3, and I still believe they are, even with all these buffs, but pretty much everything got buffed. Pretty much all the weapons got around double damage, some even more than triple. All of the powers got buffed, with like one exception in Annihilation Field, and at least doubled or tripled in so many cases on the base damage, let alone the evos. So they have really made things absolutely playable for silver and gold, which we know they didn't focus on a lot during the early testing, but they made the changes that were needed. They've pretty much boosted every single assault rifle across the board. Even though the Matic got a small nerf before, now it's gotten a buff. It's still not very good, just because, the low amount of damage that it does, and the fact that it'll break your finger and still not be worth it. But regardless, assault rifles across the board, huge buff. Shotguns are now better skirmish weapons. They boosted their damage and the accuracy outside of cover, while reducing the extra accuracy bonus when fired from cover. The smart choke now actually works on the gun, kind of like it did in the alpha. The smart choke was amazing in the alpha. The Disciple was a really good gun. Smart choke 1, Disciple 1, I was tearing through silvers. And when the game came out, I have, Disciple 3 and a smart choke 10, and I'm not doing very well in bronze. But after this, smart choke absolutely makes shotguns more accurate. The tight spread is significantly noticeable, as opposed, contrary to how it was when the game came out. It's still not as great as it was in the alpha, but for most shotguns, it absolutely works as intended, and the Disciple is stronger as well. One of the few nerfs was given to the Vanquisher. We know that the Vanquisher had that like triple weak point headshot multiplier that they then fixed. And now they've nerfed it once again, because they saw that the only thing viable were melee and Vanquisher builds. So they nerfed the Vanquisher again, but the Vanquisher is still awesome. Even at level 1 in gold, the Vanquisher is still an amazing sniper rifle. Tried and true, 4 rounds, high damage, still does really, really good crit damage, more than the Black Widow still does. So there's obviously going to be some other balances in the future, but I think that they've nailed most of them. There are still some guns that need a little bit more love. There's some ways, like the charge weapons, such as like the Venom or anything that needs charging. Those are still super wonky, and they don't work as they should. So those things still need work. But the enemy factions got a bit of a change as well. We know that the Ket were goddamn monsters. So now the Ket aren't as terrible. The Fiend will have less sync attack chances on silver and gold difficulties. The Fiend still like glitches all over the map, much like it did when the game first came out. And boy, in the alpha, that thing was glitch city central. But it's not supposed to sync you as often, and when it gets a sync kill, it's supposed to their chances of syncs are supposed to be even less after that. They also buffed the outlaws, so no longer we can go to gold outlaws to have a nice, easy, fun farming time. They buffed the sharpshooters again. They will start firing pretty much immediately. Hydras push players into cover. So the Hydras are a lot beefier. They are harder to take down. They have a bit more armor, but they took a small toning down to the Berserkers when fighting them from cover. So, you know, a little bit here and there. They left the Remnants untouched, the strongest thing, most annoying, or not the strongest, most annoying things, but one of the easier, you know, foot soldiers. It didn't see anything done to the Raiders, but the Raiders seem way stronger. But they're looking into monitoring the performance of the Remnants. The Observers remain untouched, even though those things are still way too strong. And they also fixed the glitch where your difficulty in single player changed the damage that you do in multiplayer. So that is very good. So let's look at all the damage powers. Raw damage upgrades increased by a cumulative 25 to 35% per power base damage. And power damage upgrades increased by a cumulative 20% per line. Pretty much everything does way more damage. And now power combos will work in silver and gold, where before detonations just didn't do anything in silver and gold. And it was absolutely ludicrous. It was insanely obvious that this was a problem, and probably wasn't that what they wanted it to be, but it clearly was on launch day. And they have fixed it by increasing the base combo damage by 60% in bronze, 140% in silver, and 200% in gold, and increasing the value of all combo damage upgrades in the passives from 30 to 50%. So combo detonations are now amazing. Cryo is still tried and true with, you know, concussive for detonation. Fire explosions are amazing. There might be something wonky with the Hydras where if you get 2 detonations right on top of each other, Hydras like instantly die on gold. So I don't know if like that was, you know, what they wanted. But there are still quite a few glitches in the game. Wraiths, you know, prevent you from jumping when they're half a mile away. Fiends can teleport, and they're still the most quiet characters in the entire game. But they've made a lot of changes. Barricade, still pretty useless power, but they increased the duration by 1 second. And the duration bonus has been changed. And the rank 5 buff went from 20 to 30% on the power damage bonus. Flat cannon is now an absolute monster. They increased the power cell count from 2 to 4, so they double the amount of flat cannon that you get, and the primary damage was increased from 180 to 250. So now flat cannon is like one of the best powers in the game. We've always been using it for stunning, and now it does massive damage as well. The assault turret, very underwhelming out the gate. That was very noticeable in the alpha, regardless of what some playtesters might have said. But the flamethrower damage per second has been more than tripled. The health upgrade has been increased by 20% and then 25% on the rank 4. Powers cooldown now triggers when the turret spawns instead of when it's destroyed. So nice quality change of life there. The bullet base damage went from 20 to 36. In the multiplayer, the cooldown is now 30 seconds, has been reduced to 10 seconds on the rank 4 cooldown upgrade. So, you know, if you liked the assault turret before, you're going to love it now. And if you were like me and saw that it was completely useless, maybe use 1 or 2 of your classes to check it out, and you might find some things that work. Incinerate was almost tripled in its base damage, so now Incinerate is awesome and is finally something we can do to combat against armor. And the damage over time was slightly changed, but the base damage is just a giant nerf, and now it's really, really good. You know, especially for priming for those combo explosions. And Overload got a big buff as well. The uncharged went from 150 to 200, and charge damage went from 200 to 300. So now Overload is a monster. Does way more damage to shields, which were very, very powerful in the game. Enemy shields you couldn't do a whole lot of. You throw disruptor rounds, you'd throw overload, and you'd throw energy drain, and it still didn't seem to do nearly what you could do against shields in Mass Effect 3. So now this is kind of a bit more on par. I don't feel like overload as powerful as it was in ME3. Obviously now we have to charge it, but it's really good for combo detonations and detonating multiple targets at the same time, and now we'll do much more power against shields. Flamethrower was buffed by 20 DPS. Cryo Beam was buffed by 15 DPS. Energy Drain was increased by 15 DPS. The shield boost got a base radius from 6 meters to 8 meters. So now all of your Angarans with your shield boost, you're going to be getting a lot more damage, assist score. So that'll help you rank up that. Invasion got an infection radius on the rank 5 spread radius. The Remnant VI got 9 buffs. So if you haven't gotten that Solarian, that Remnant VI is maybe something that you want to look into now, because the base health went from 500 to 800. Health upgrade went from 15% to 65%. So Remnant VI is definitely something you want to look at, for debuffing and for, health upgrades. It's definitely something that you're going to want to look into now that they've kind of changed all the bugs into it and made it much more usable. All the biotic powers are now something that the enemies are going to want to have to worry about. The pole's crushing grip damage over time went from 35 to 60, so almost double the damage there. Throw increased base damage from 225 to 240. Shockwave increased base damage from 225 to 245. That's now like a really good primer for biotic charge Shockwave classes. Singularity had the much needed base cooldown from 24 seconds to 20 seconds. That's the base cooldown. And the recharge rate bonus on the rank 5 went from 25% to 40%. So now Singularity can be used as it always should have been used in the past. And we can finally start using those really good evos that the Singularity has had, now that it doesn't take a year for that thing to recharge. Backlash got an Aegis health base increase from 350 to 400, which I thought was very much needed. It also got a reflect damage bonus, which wasn't as necessary, but I'm totally for it. And maybe you want to put more than 0 points into Backlash now instead of just having that 1 pity point in there. Charge increased damage by 25% damage. Nova increased base damage from 400 to 420. It's still not fantastic as it is in ME3, but if you have a Nova build class, something to mix things up in between melees and charges or something like that, Nova's going to have a little bit more pack-free punch at the very base. Annihilation has the base cooldown penalty from 65 to 75%, decrease the radius, and the damage bonus will now stack on the same target. So it's got a couple of nerfs, but also a buff there as well. It's still fantastic and doesn't change how good it is really in conjunction with the rest of your powers. The debuff is still really good and probably what you're going to want to spec into there, and still uses as intended. Lance has a slightly improved aim assist at longer ranges, and we know that Lance has been very hit and miss at all ranges, and it's still a little wonky, but it's one of those powers that you want to be more accurate with, or at least feels like the game is intending you to be less careless with it because it does weak point damage. So the Lance getting a little bit of quality of life change there. Barrier got a little bit of a nerf, but it kind of fixes itself in the problem that we had with Barrier. So it's kind of a trade-off there with the cooldown automatic shield generation, and the Biotic Link now can apply once every 5 seconds. So it's a little give and take there. Biotic Ascension has the improved bonuses for the rank 6 evolutions. So we're still kind of trying to figuring out, especially with all the bonuses to throw and pull and lance, how to properly use those powers with Biotic Ascension. So now we'll be able to do a bit more testing to see what is the best way to use those powers when you are in Ascension. The Asari Adept and the Krogan Vanguard got shield nerfs, 250 to 200 and 180 to 150 respectively. So those are like one of the 4 nerfs that were given in the game, and then pretty much all of the weapons got buffs. Avenger, small buff. Matic, very large buff in the damage from 50 to 63 to 90 to 113, so almost double there. And a magazine increased base from 16 to 20. So It's now okay-ish. It's still not that great of a gun because its base damage is still quite low. I would be fine if it did like, I don't know, 120 or 130 damage at 16% 16 magazine size, because it's gonna break your finger more than the Raptor did in the ME3 or even the Matic did there. So it's gonna fill the same kind of role, but not be very good. The Zalkin got an increased damage. Not fantastic because the way that those weapons work. The Valkyrie got pretty much doubled in at damage, and that seems to be performing very well. The Soned has been doing very well. The PA got almost a double increase in damage. The Halberd is now pretty decent, especially if you have those assault rifle amps on there. So it'll be a contender, something that you can throw in there every now and again. All of the pistols got buffed. The Carnifex got a big buff. The Hornet got more than double, or about double damage, and now the Hornet's actually a really good gun. So that's something you can use as a primary weapon for those quick 100% recharge rate bonuses. So for those caster classes, a Hornet is going to be a much more viable thing in gold level 1 than it was level 10 in silver in ME3. Sidewinder got a small buff. It was a good gun to begin with, but now it's a little bit more damage, which is always nice because it's not good enough to be a primary, and it's going to be a nice little secondary thing to bip some things. Hurricane still retaining its great priming powers, and now will be doing even more damage. The Eagle got from 69 to 80 to 96 to 111 on the damage and improved accuracy. I haven't unlocked it at a good enough level, so still a lot of testing to be done there. The Rose Rad is now pretty decent. The Ushor is a really good gun. That went from 463 base low damage to 775, which was 240 higher than its normal high damage was. And the magazine size was doubled from 1 to 2, so now that is also a good primary pistol that you can use, and its weight was reduced as well. The charger accuracy was slightly reduced. That's fine because it's just a common weapon that you would really only use when you're very early on in the game, as it's super lightweight and some pretty decent damage, and you can always use turbocharge to make it more accurate. Anyway, pretty much all the shotguns got big buffs as well. The Katana, still not great, but hey, a little stronger. Piranha got a small buff. It was already good before. The Disciple went from 60, a low base damage, to 79. So now it's pretty decent, although the reload is still really wonky on the Disciples, so it's not going to be very good. The Ruzad got a huge buff. Before, it was the first DLC shotgun, and it was an uncommon, and it was kind of garbage, and now it's really good. Now it's one of the best shotguns in the game. It went from 98 to 123 to 171 to 15 damage. So the Ruzad now is a really good gun. Crusader got almost a double buff. I haven't gotten that gun yet, so I can't tell you how that works. The Hesh damage per pellet was increased by 11. The Hesh is one of the best guns in the game. I'm using the Hesh in this gameplay right here. I think it's at level 2, and it's amazing. Fantastic gun. Hesh, tried and true on pretty much all platforms, weapon or not, caster or not. Hesh is amazing. Really good gun. Scattershot also got a damage per pellet increase by 20 damage. It's not as good as the Hesh, but can still find... If you're looking for a more mobile class, maybe something with A field with movement bonus, and you don't want to have to go to crates, or you don't have anything that runs off of power cells, maybe the Scattershot might work for you, but it's not going to be doing as much as the Hesh or the Ruzad, but still, it's okay now. The Dawn, insane buff, one of the best guns in the game, also got a magazine increase from 2 to 3. The Venom got a big buff in its damage, and the initial round will now explode on contact with a target, and fragments travel faster and longer before they explode. But it's still kind of not that great. And pretty much all of the snipers got small buffs outside of the Venture, which got a small nerf. So yeah, the Wraith reduced health by 20, Chosen reduced health by 5, Anointed reduced shields by 47. Those were big trouble, especially in gold when they spawn in 2s, and the Destined reduced shields by 67%. Oh, and the Cobra RPG can now damage Ascendants after the orb is destroyed on normal or bronze difficulty, and so you don't have to double shot in bronze, and now if you do a double shot, it'll be way more consistent in gold. And some small buffs to pretty much all of the outlaw units as well. Krogan Berserker reduced armor by 20%. Hydra increased armor by 38%, so a bit of a trade-off there as well. So a lot of great things coming out. A lot more guns are viable. A lot more powers are now viable. So we're going to have to switch everything up, see what works. I've tested most new buffed abilities and weapons, and it's all good and it's great. And I can't wait to tell you guys more about how to optimally play on gold in Mass Effect multiplayer in Andromeda.